Welcome to Unplanned and Untold, a podcast that dives into the real life, unexpected twists of facing an unplanned pregnancy in college. Join us as we listen to the unplanned and untold stories of those who have overcome the odds in order to achieve their goals. Welcome back to another episode of Unplanned and Untold. I'm your host, Caitlin Willing, and today we have an amazing guest. Jennifer Williams is here with us to tell us her story. Thank you for coming on, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And tell me a little bit about where were you born? Like, what did life look like as a child for you?
So I lived in the same house, same neighborhood my entire childhood.
Oh my gosh.
Grew up in Fayetteville, went to had the same set of school, had the same friends my entire school year, all the way up into my, high school years. And I moved out when I was 18, not too long after I had my daughter. So,
wow. So Fayetteville, is it a small town? How big?
no, it's actually a pretty big town. It's
Okay.
Very highly populated by the military. Fort Bragg,
wow.
which is now called Fort Liberty now, is
Okay.
where that's based at. And so that's where I grew up. My parents are not military. That's just where they landed, and that's just where we grew up at.
Do you feel like you had friends come and go because their parents were military? Was that kind of
Yes.
common?
Yeah.
Wow.
Very much so. Yeah. I had a lot of good friends who were there for a while. And of course, military, shipped them off. And so it was a lot of come and go and whatnot. So it was interesting, but it was also very sad.
I bet, you become friends with somebody and then you realize they're moving a year later. That's
Yep.
got to be really hard,
Mhm.
And then living in a home, your childhood home, your entire life, that is a dream. I mean, truly, who gets to do that? Wow. Do your parents still have the home?
Actually, no, they don't. They
Okay.
actually, about a year after I moved out, I have an older brother who moved out about 2 years before I had, and so they decided that they were ready to move out of Fayetteville. So they sold my childhood home and moved about 45 minutes up the road and bought their now forever home that they're in, and they have just actually officially paid it off.
Wow.
And so it is theirs now. So I've seen my parents go through some really hard times. For to see that is just, it melts my heart. So
I bet. So proud. And usually our guests on the podcast, it's no surprise that they've had an unplanned pregnancy.
Yes.
So I feel like, there's no huge surprise here. But a lot of our guests have experienced an unplanned pregnancy in college, but with your story, you find out you're pregnant quite a bit earlier than your college years.
Yes, I did. I was pregnant my junior year of high school. Had just at 16, I had my daughter 7 days after I turned 17.
Wow. So take me through that point in time. When did you find out you were pregnant? How did you know?
Found out when I was pregnant, when I was in labor in the hospital.
Stop. Wait, you did not know until you were in labor at 16.
At 16.
Did you gain much? Tell me more. I need to know all the details. Did you gain weight?
I did not. I was maybe 100 pounds soaking wet when I was at that age. I was still having my monthly menstrual cycle.
Wow.
Wasn't sick, didn't show. I had felt fine. And one morning I had woke up and was not feeling well, stayed from home from school that day, and started having a lot of just, cramping and bleeding and whatnot. And then ended up at the hospital and ta-da.
I cannot believe this. So did you feel like you were just having a really bad period? Like what did you tell your mom for her to take you even to the hospital?
I was scared more than anything, to be honest. I mean, I was, at that time I was, had just turned 17, I didn't know what was really going on because I didn't know I was pregnant. So I was just having a lot of severe, cramping and whatnot. And Mama was like, okay, well, let's just take you to the ER. And so I'm sitting there on the exam table, and there's up to a certain point that I can remember of what was going on. And then everything kind of went black until I woke up. So I was sitting on the exam table, and the doctor looked at my mother and said, she's about to have a baby. She's full term. And my mom's face was white as a ghost. And I'm like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And from there, I was put on a hospital bed, strolled down the hallway, and I remember the lights in the ceiling.
Yes.
That's the last thing I remember.
Oh, wow.
And then woke up the next morning with a baby.
So what happened in between? What made you black out?
I had a seizure because
Wow.
there was just so much pressure on my body.
Okay.
And I had no prenatal care at all whatsoever because of course I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I just, that whole episode was just like, it's gone. I have
Your
no
body
memory
was
of it.
traumatized.
Yeah. And so,
Wow.
mhm,
Wow. So did they end up doing a C-section?
no,
Okay.
apparently from what I was told from the doctor and
Yeah.
my mother, I had her vaginally, just as normal as could be, but I don't remember any of it.
Oh my gosh. So they wheel you back, you have a seizure, you black out, you have the baby. Now you wake up. What do you see in the room?
My mother, just like, are you okay? How are you feeling? And then I look over and there's this little bundle of just a human that came out of me. And my
Oh
mom's
my
like,
God.
this is your baby. And I was like, oh my God. It was utter just shock. I was like, okay, all right, well, this is what we're doing. And
Oh my
so,
word.
yeah.
Was in
So
that moment, was she more concerned about your health? Were you scared of how she was going to react?
um a little bit of everything.
Okay.
I knew that she was disappointed in, the situation, because, growing up back then when I was, we learned about sex ed and all of that in school. It wasn't anything that we talked about in the home. It's just,
Wow.
just something that we just didn't talk about.
Yeah.
So whatever I had learned was either from friends,
Yeah.
how, friends talk, or what you learned from either the internet, or, talking in sex ed with,
Yeah.
your friends and whatnot at school, but it's just something that wasn't talked about. So I was more upset that I knew what she was thinking and how disappointed she was in me than
Right.
anything, but she was more concerned of my health, making sure that I was okay, and the baby. And, my daughter, who is now 26, she's had some trial and tribulations of her own, of
Yeah.
course, but she was a healthy 7 pound, 2 ounce baby girl who melts my heart to this day.
Oh my gosh. I truly cannot imagine your life being flipped so upside down, not only for you to then have to wrap your mind around, I have this little human that I now
Mhm.
need to take care of that I didn't have 9 months to think
Mm-mm.
through or to purchase items for
Nope.
or to get prepared for. She's just here. And then, even as a mom now, how scary that is to see such a young daughter going through this, having no idea what's
Mhm.
happening. And here's this little baby.
Yep.
So after the hospital, y'all go home. I mean, you didn't have diapers, you didn't have baby clothes. What did y'all do?
My mother and my father, and of course I had some really close aunts and uncles that were like, okay, let's do this. So, they never really told me what happened on the outside while I was in the hospital and whatnot. So I get home and there's baby clothes and wipes and diapers and, all of these items were, gathered together for me and whatnot. So,
So you come home to all of these baby items.
mhm,
Now, your mom, I believe, she had you pretty young, correct?
she did.
Wow.
She had my brother at 18 and had me at 19.
Wow. So she
Um,
knew a little bit of what you were going through.
yes, she did. Her story is a little bit different than mine was. When she met my father, many, 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 many moons ago,
Yeah.
she was adopted, and her adopted parents, they were wonderful. They were great grandparents, but they weren't pleased with, her meeting my father and wanting to spend time with them and them actually having a relationship. So my mother actually left home very early, about, I think, probably about 17 or 18 that she left home. And so her and my dad have been together for 43 years. And
Oh my
so,
word.
they love each other. And like I said, I've seen them go through some really hard times and whatnot, but she left home because she was pregnant with my brother and they were not very approving of it. So I kind of knew in the back of my head that it would be a different story for me a little bit. But
Or
she didn't want me to probably go through what she kind of went through as a young mother as well too, because it's hard.
so hard. And to navigate that alone without your mom, I can't, I mean, it's extremely hard.
Yeah, I would be lost without my mom, to be honest.
Wow. So she comes around and she supports you. And there's still a piece of this puzzle we haven't talked about, which is the father of
Yeah.
your daughter. What, I mean, was he in high school too? What did this look like?
He had actually just graduated the year before I did.
Okay.
So while I was pregnant, he was a senior and whatnot. And so when we had my daughter, he had graduated that summer before. And so he was just as much as, shocked as I was and whatnot. But, it was, we had this beautiful baby that we created, and it was like, wow, it was still a lot of shock.
Yes. And so once you had your daughter, who told him? Like, how did he find out?
My mom, she
Wow.
called from the hospital and was like,
Wow.
"Hey, Jennifer has had a baby and whatnot, so you're now a father." And so, one of the most important things was for me was, when he was told, was like, "Okay, your name is going on her birth certificate. I
Okay.
know we're not married, we're
Right.
very young." I said, "But this is your child,
Right.
here she is, this little, beautiful bundle of just,
Yes.
joy." And I said, she's yours. And so I wanted to be sure that, he had that connection and whatnot.
Right.
And so it's just what it was. It just felt right.
Absolutely. And so you're still in high school, you go home, you've got this baby. What does the rest of school look like for you?
I missed probably more than half of my junior year.
Okay.
I was at home a lot. I was required to be, for my doctor recommended me that I stay home, out of school, not doing anything strenuous, because I had just had a baby with no care.
Right.
So I was running back and forth to doctor's appointments. I was having some iron deficiency problems and whatnot. And so I was at home resting. So I missed a good 3.5, almost 4 months of school.
Wow.
And so when I did go back to school, people were like, "What happened? Where have you
Right.
been at?" And I'm
Where'd you
like,
disappear to?
look, I have
Look,
this."
this is what's been happening for the last 9 months. Ta-da.
Right. And so,
Wow.
and got back in school and whatnot, and, busted my tail in. I was able to pass, my junior year, and, proceed on to my senior year. And his, her, blah, blah.
You're
Let me
fine.
get this right.
Yes.
Her father's mother, who spoke no English at all,
Really?
yes, watched my daughter while I went back to school during the day. And so she was stay-at-home mom, and so she spoke no English at all. So both of my children are mixed. They are half Puerto Rican and, white, of course. And so
Wow.
I had to learn to communicate with her when I got home. How is she doing?
Right.
And so I was like forced learned. Okay, you got to learn how to speak Spanish because she's not going to speak English. So I was like, oh, great, another obstacle. Why
Just
not?
another thing to add to your plate as a teenage mom is learn how to speak Spanish. Oh my
Yes. And
gosh.
so, of course, you learn all the bad words for
Sure, of
first.
course,
So,
always.
and so she was a blessing as well. She, to this day, still calls me her daughter, even though I've been divorced from her son for a very, very, very long time. And so she took us in with open arms, and she was very caring and very loving towards both of my children.
Wow.
Even myself, I go to her home today, and there is still a picture of me on her wall in the living room. So I'm
Oh
like,
my
okay,
gosh.
I'm a part of the family,
That's
and will
family.
continue. Yeah, yeah, no matter what. So,
Absolutely.
but she, like I said, she was a blessing.
Oh my goodness. So you finally graduate high school.
Yes, I had to bust my butt
I
to
can't imagine.
graduate, because I missed a lot of credits in my junior year. And so
Absolutely.
I had to pick up every class I took. I had to pass. I didn't have a
Right.
choice. And so I was, and along that time there was some some family upsetness. My dad was still very disappointed in me and whatnot, because if he thought very highly of me and had very high expectations of what my future would look like. And now I've, added a child into my life so young. How is that going to affect me? Am I, not going to be able to do what I wanted to do? And so I had a little bit of drive behind me a little bit.
Sure.
Not just to prove anyone wrong, but to show that I could do it.
Yeah, that you were capable of it. You could be a mother and finish your high school diploma, get that diploma.
So there was a little bit of back and forth and whatnot, but when I walked across that stage, I remember to this day, I still cried, because it was like, I did it. I did it. I did not let statistics, I'm not a statistic. I was like, yes, I did it.
Oh my goodness. What an accomplishment. Truly. Yep. And now take me after high school. How else does life unfold for you?
So a couple of years later, I had my son. About 3 years later, I had my son. And then 6 months after that, we got married. Just because we felt it was the right thing to do, move on and, try to make life as best as it was. Unfortunately, it just didn't work that way. He wanted different things than I wanted and whatnot. So we got divorced. I had been divorced for a couple of years, and then found another wonderful individual who I spent a couple of years with, and we got married, and that didn't work out either. So marriage isn't for everyone.
Oh no. Man.
So probably about in 2014, I tried to go back to school. And so I started at Liberty University to go and get my bachelor's degree in human resources, which I have been in human resources now for 23 years going on.
Wow.
So I've had a very successful human resources career, and it's all been work experience based. And then in 2014, I decided, okay, I want to go back to school. That is something that I've always wanted to do, because I even wanted to do it right out of high school. Unfortunately, I had responsibilities. I had kids, and I needed to bring in an income, and, college just wasn't on the game plan for me.
Right.
So, started school back in 2014, went for about 2 years, and then went through a separation and a very bad divorce.
And
That's
gotta be so hard.
It was very hard, because then right at that time, my daughter had just found out she was pregnant.
Wow.
And so she was graduated from high school. She actually graduated from high school early, a very smart individual, bright young girl. But she had my grandson 7 years ago. So so she was pregnant. She is a young mother at 19, of course. She's, in college herself and working full time and whatnot. And so I had to, leave that. I had to leave that relationship, because it was very hard. It was very emotional, abusive and whatnot. So it was bad.
Right.
So I decided, I picked up my kids one day and be like, okay, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And 3 days later, we had moved everything out that was ours, out of a home that we had purchased together, and I left it all behind.
Wow.
To start all over again.
Oh my goodness. But you knew you had the grit and the grind behind you, because you had overcome so much already in your life.
Yep. I was, I had been a single mother for years. Very, very many different ups and downs and bumps along the roads. I look back now realizing where things are at, and I look back and go, oh, okay, I was making $9.50 an hour with 2 kids.
Oh my
gosh. And trying to raise them and work full time. I just was like, oh my God, how did I even do that? Thinking about the cost of things, and it wasn't something that was on my mind. I just knew I had to do it.
Right.
I'm not built to quit. I'm not a quitter. I've never been a quitter. So
I love that. And it's wild to look back on those memories and literally ask yourself, how in the world did we do this? And you just do, you pull your bootstraps up and you just get done what you need to get done, not only for yourself, but for your children. I want to return back to you telling me that your daughter had an unplanned pregnancy pretty young as well. So
Mhm.
you were also on the receiving end of that news. Take me back to that moment and how did that feel?
Um, I was definitely mixed emotions for
Sure.
sure. She had already graduated high school. She was in college and she was working full time and whatnot. And I had come home from work and, we go in my room with my then husband and
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and, he's standing beside me and she looks at me and she tells me, she goes, Mom, I'm pregnant. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. All right. What do you want to do?
Right.
Let's talk about it.
Right.
And she goes, and I think her face, I remember her face being just like, oh, it's okay.
Mm.
And and I was like, everything's fine. I said, let's talk about what you want to do. What's in your heart? Do you want to give it up for adoption? Do you want to have it?
Right.
Do you want to do something else? I said, let's talk about your options. I said, you tell me. You're grown.
Right.
You're 19 years old. I am here to support you. However it is that you choose that you need. You need. Um, my ex-husband at the time, however, he was not as nice.
Okay.
He, hugged her. I hugged her, I was like, we'll figure this out. We'll talk about this some more. I was trying to be very supportive and everything that I possibly could for her,
Right.
at that point in time, because I knew she was scared because I remember myself at that age. I was scared out of my mind.
Right.
I'm responsible for a human.
Truly. They don't come with instruction manuals, people.
And the books that you read are all full of just BS, if you ask me.
Usually written by people who've never had children.
Yes. And so I was like, okay, I hugged her. She went on about her business for that evening. And then, I'm sitting there with my, and with my husband, who's now my ex, thank the Lord. He's like, she's too young. She doesn't need to have this. You need to make her have an abortion.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, pardon me, excuse me? No, absolutely not. She's an adult. That's her decision.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother, it will not force her to do anything that she does not want to do.
Right.
Now, if
Right.
she decides to make that decision, then that's her decision. I am here for
Mm-hmm.
her to support her however she chooses to.
Right.
And the comment that comes out of his mouth is, and it's funny how you get things like that in your mind that will always stay in
That's
your
right.
mind when
They're like
people,
burned.
yes,
Yes.
I am not raising someone else's child.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
So I was like,
Yeah.
fine. And I said, you know what? I'm done with this conversation for right now. I'm
Right.
going to go support my daughter because that's what she needs right now.
Right.
However, that did not set well with him.
Mm.
He became very just hateful and ugly and just would not say nice things, would never speak to her. I mean, he was not a good person. The tables turned a lot. We got into a lot of arguments, a lot of, fights with each other and whatnot. And just, it was a horrible, experience for her. And, she told us right at Christmas time
Gotcha.
that following May, we got into one more huge fight. And I finally just said, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. This is
Mm.
not what marriage is supposed to be like. I deserve way, way much better than this. And I said,
Mm.
I'm done. And I
And
said,
that
I
was
want a
it.
divorce. I said, I will have my stuff packed up. And I said, I will be out of here by this weekend.
Wow.
We did not speak to each other the rest of the week. I slept on the floor in my daughter's room on a blow up mattress.
Oh my goodness.
And my father showed up that weekend and helped me move all of my belongings out of the home. And I left a car and a beautiful house
Right.
and just packed up my belongings and packed up my kids. And off we went to
Yeah.
start all over again.
A new chapter in life.
new chapter in life, and I would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
Wow. And your daughter now, and your granddaughter or grandson, which is it?
Grandson.
Grandson. How
Mhm.
old is that baby now?
He is 7.
Oh my gosh.
Blonde hair, blue eyes,
So
freckles.
sweet.
It's adorable. Steals my heart.
So
Steals
sweet.
my heart. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. How do you think baby steps would have impacted you and even your daughter if it was around at that time?
Um, I would have probably went to college right after high school, after I
Mm,
graduated, knowing that option was there because I knew I wanted it. I would have, jumped all over for the opportunity to know that it was there to actually get to where I wanted to go sooner.
sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And even to have the camaraderie of knowing other women were doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, a lot of times the housing is an awesome thing that we provide these women with, but the community aspect is it's a game changer for a lot of our student moms.
Yeah. I have to say that was one of the hardest things I dealt with was the community portion because, when I was in high school back in, 1995 to 1999, there wasn't a lot of young mothers running around that you could get support from. It wasn't talked
Exactly.
about.
No.
Wasn't any support groups or anything. So it was like, okay, we're going at it alone, and so
Right.
I did what I had to do because I knew I had responsibilities and I would do anything for my children to this day.
Exactly. And our hope is really to debunk all of that and to bring awareness to this isolated population of women that are not
Mm-hmm.
going to be going anywhere. I mean,
Yep.
at the end of the day, we are still going to have, student moms that
Mm-hmm.
exist, unplanned pregnancies that happen, whether it be in high school or college, they are still happening.
Yep.
And we need to start having the conversation about what do we do? How can we stand in the gap for them to help better them and their future that is at risk?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Knowing the few individuals that I know that had kids very, very, very young, they would have benefited from a program like this as well too. Just to have, that community, that piece of just, oh my God, I can make it.
Yes.
I can actually make it with this help. And so I think it would have helped a lot of young mothers if it was there for them at that point in time in their lives. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on and sharing your
absolutely.
story and your heart and just your determination and everything that has gotten you to where you are today. You really are very inspiring for the young women who are listening that they can
Thank
overcome
you.
things. And you are, I heard, back in college. Is that right?
I am. I actually was able to finally get all of my ducks in a row, even though there's some of them are still running around, somewhere. But I started back this last August. I am back at Liberty
Wow.
University fully
Oh, wow.
online. So I am working full time. I am going to school full time. And then I
Wow.
also have a board chair position with a local
Oh,
chamber in my area that I volunteer at. And
oh,
give
wow.
all of my wonderful HR expertise.
Oh my goodness. You have a full plate. Truly.
But
Wow.
I love my life. I really do. It is. I love my kids. If it
Yeah,
was not for them, I would be lost without them. They are my heart and my soul, and
absolutely.
I give everything to them. So if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing.
I hear that every podcast. I hear that, that fear in the moment when you find out you're pregnant and you had not planned on it. You feel like your life flashes before your very eyes. But when you let it play out, I've never had a woman on the podcast say that she's regretted any decision that she has made. In fact, a lot of these women say it's helped mold them into who they are today.
Totally agree, 100%.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. And to all of our listeners, we hope to have you back next week for another episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye bye.
Bye.
Do you want to be a part of an organization that is the first of its kind to empower student moms? Your support can impact generations to come. Consider making a financial contribution at babysteps.org.